This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Stop empowering women, Christian. This is Wretched Radio. Josh Bice catching everybody's attention at deliveredbygrace.com. Stop empowering women. What? That doesn't seem right. It's because the word isn't right. That we want to take a look at the issue more biblically and use biblical language so that we do things rightly. Instead of empowering women, Josh recommends start equipping them to biblically lead. That's what we should be doing, not deconstructing and changing the system that was established by God himself. This is not a bunch of white guys got together to say, how do we keep women down? No, this is the way that God established things beginning in the garden. There are roles for men and women. And I suspect the reason that there is a debate going on right now in heretofore supposedly conservative evangelical circles regarding the role of women is because there has been a minimizing of the importance of the role of women in the church and in the home. Yeah, I do believe that the world's message of feminism, it makes its way in. It gets to us. You've come a long way, baby. Now you've got your own cigarette. This message has been going on for 100 years. And we hear it, and we listen to it, and it gets into us, and we can adopt that mindset and that language of the world that is a radical feminist ideology. But I think a big part of the reason that this is a debate and why there's a lot of women unhappy is because we simply have not celebrated the leadership role that God has established for women. And when we go about the business of trying to help them feel disenfranchised and deconstructing the system, I think we're just adding fuel to that fire. I don't think that we're really helping and encouraging women at all. For instance, let's just say, Joey, your job in life is to make the caramel corn at Candyland on St. Peter Street in St. Paul, which I'm going to get to have in about 6 weeks, and I can hardly wait. Nevertheless, enough about my issues. Joey, that's your job. How do you feel about your job?
That is a vocation that I would be honored to be called to.
Okay, that wasn't exactly the canned fake response that I was hoping for, but nevertheless.
Because it wasn't canned or fake.
Let's. I'll remind you why the candy at Candyland is so good. They've got a window. When you walk into this little candy store in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota, there's a window, and behind it is this archaic machine. Frankly, I think it has rust on it. And they run things through kind of a treadmill and drizzle chocolate. So it'll be like potato chips with chocolate drizzled all over it. Like potato chips need help. Since when? Or it'll be those turtles with the cashews and the pecan or whatever it is that you tend to make. And the chocolate, they put the chocolate and it drizzles over it. I'm watching the person then take the candy or the potato chip off the assembly line. And about every third turtle that they moved, they licked their fingers. Didn't use a wet wipe. Back to the turtles. That's why things are so delicious there. So let's just say, Joey, that you're thrilled to pieces to work at Candyland. But what if your wife, what if your kids started to make fun of you? You just work at Candyland making caramel corn? And what if the world was constantly saying caramel corn is stupid? You got to be doing more important things. I suspect that would foster a little bit of discontent inside of you. And I think that's precisely what's been going on in the world and in the church. And if we were louder about celebrating the role of women and more grateful for the role of women, look, we can downplay it. We follow men. We follow the cues of the world too, don't we? We hear the world say, work, 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 corner office, make more money. And we can maybe conclude that's the important role in this family. Not according to God. That's just your role. You ain't better than. It's just our role. That's just what we've been assigned to do. Women have been assigned, and I've been saying this for years, I think a far more important role, a role with more lasting implications, would be the role of raising children. got to be a little careful with that, because remember, the eye can't say to the hand, hey, I don't need you. That the whole body is important, but I'm just telling you, the role of women, extremely important. Now, Josh Buice, in Stop Empowering Women and Start Equipping Them to Biblically Lead, does something that I have not seen the social justice movement doing much of, as they go about the business of making the case that we need to deconstruct the hierarchy, the male hierarchy in the church, to empower women to lead. I have not seen a lot of biblical support for that. And I think there's a reason. There isn't any. Josh Buice takes a look at the biblical support for the role of women in church, specifically in light of the recent calls at the Southern Baptist Convention to nominate a woman as the president of the SBC. Do we have anything in the Bible that we can turn to say, all right, how do we resolve this? Because one side is saying, no, that role is an authoritative role, where the person has authority to some degree over men, is going to be preaching to men, Paul stating clearly, I don't allow a woman to have authority or to preach, both things, separate and both together. And so that side would say, so I'm sorry, but that role should be reserved for a man. On the other hand, you've got people saying, that's not a pastoral role. Therefore, 1 Timothy 2 and 3 do not apply to the role of president of the SBC. Josh Buice, very clever. One panelist at SBC 2018 commented that when situations arise where women have been mistreated in the church, the wisest answer is to empower women in leadership to bring about a better environment. And it sounds good, but is it biblical? Acts chapter 6. Did you guess that? The church is having a crisis. And it's created a division in the church between people groups. Luke writes, quote, a complaint by the Hellenists, the Greeks, their believers, arose against the Hebrews because their widows were being neglected in the daily distribution. 6:1, Acts 6, verse 1. That sounds like an issue of women being mistreated. And indeed it is. An unequal distribution, that was serious. So what did the early church do? They recognized how important it was, so they called together the entire church to address the problem. That's verse 2 of Acts chapter 6. Now, it was a reminder that the apostles were not supposed to be distracted, and that's not in a pejorative way, but they were supposed to be focusing on preaching the word and prayer, not getting busy in these other activities of the church. Preaching, prayer. So everybody got that. The needs of the widows, however, could not be overlooked. So what did the leaders, the male leaders of the early church do? Well, they called upon the church to choose individuals from among the body to lead in this task, to assure that these women were cared for and no longer marginalized. Please note, they chose men. And Josh Buice is right. If ever there was a time when the Bible should have made it clear that the best way to deal with mistreatment of women is to empower them, to put them in charge of programs, this would have been it. But that's not what they did. Josh writes, if there is any task that it would seem appropriate to place a woman in positions of authority, surely this would be a perfect case. Yet the apostles directed the church to, quote, pick out from among you 7 men. That's verse 3 of Acts chapter 6. The apostles didn't recommend even one woman be enlisted in the oversight of this ministry to the widows. Didn't say they couldn't be involved in it. It's just the authority issue because it's a role issue. I also believe, frankly, this is a contentment issue. I really do. I think that this is one of the reasons that this is God's prescription for us. If you don't know it's like a kid who doesn't have any rules. They are the most miserable children on the planet. They're just please, somebody get control of me. We can be the same way. We don't outgrow that. Maybe looks a little more sophisticated. You don't throw a tantrum in the middle of the Walmart and fall down the floor and kick and scream, but we can become discontent. God says, I'm going to take care of that for you. Here's your roles, and I am well pleased when you play them well. It brings about contentment. Josh Buice. The empowerment to lead in resolving this ministry crisis was given exclusively to men. Apparently, male authority is not exclusively restricted to the teaching role of a pastor, as the SBC would currently suggest. The reason individuals have not given biblical examples of their arguments to empower women is because this one radically contradicts anything that they might be able to find. The apostles were all men. The planting of the church is led by men. The writing of the New Testament was the work of men. The leadership in the church is given to men. And so this push to empower women in unbiblical ways, this is the summary of the matter, will only serve to minimalize and discourage women from valuing their very leadership that God has called upon them to exercise. How many women need discipling? How many girls need discipling? That is a great leadership role, and that is the biblical role. This is Wretched Radio. Don't forget, if you would like to hear the entire daily broadcast, simply visit wretched.org, go to iTunes, figure out your favorite Android listening platform, and you can listen to the entire program every single day, downloaded to your listening device for free. Well, thanks to our monthly supporters called the Gospel Partners. If you'd like to partner with us, we'd be very, very grateful. Simply visit wretched.org.